Interest groups are a group of individuals that share a common interest in a specific policy area and organize to influence government by supporting candidates and officials that favor their ideas. Interest groups influence policies, and membership is either open or limited. Not everyone belongs.
There are two types of interest groups, public and private. The first type of public interest groups are environmental interest groups. They help to advocate for better environmental conditions and influence legislation. An example for an environmental interest group is the Sierra Club. The second form of public interest groups are single-issue interest groups. They focus on advocacy around a single defining issue. Example, abortion, taxation, and animal rights. And because only focused on a singular issue, they are known for their intensity of lobbying. An example would be National Rifle Association.
One type of interest groups are private interest groups. Professional interest groups are types of economic interest groups that advocate for economic benefit of their members and their constituents, or the people voting for them, and they provide direct economic benefits to their members. For example, the American Medical Association represents doctors and medical students throughout the United States.
There are two types of strategies that interest groups use to influence policymaking. The first is influencing elections. The first way that interest groups influence elections is through funding. Funding comes from individuals who wants to influence policy. Each member has to pay to join. For example, members of the NRA pay $40 per year. The interest groups use this money to help fund elections for candidates who support their agenda.
The second way interest groups influence elections is by encouraging voters. Interest groups provide information to assist the public in making informed decisions. For example, interest groups mail out ads and take surveys. Around the nation, the American Federation of Teachers influences teachers to voice their opinions.
The third way interest groups influence elections is by rating politicians, where they assess representatives' voting records on issues that are important specifically to the interest group. Interest groups will provide more funding for a candidate who have a history of voting in favor of the interest group's agenda.
When interest groups, PACs, or political action committees are formed. These are groups of people working together for a common goal with a similar belief. They donate funds to candidates and contribute to campaigns so that certain legislation is put into place.
The second strategy interest groups use to influence policymaking is through lobbying. There are two forms of lobbying, grassroots and direct. Grassroots lobbying uses protest, demonstrations, marches, internet ads, mail-outs, and social media to indirectly influence Congress through members of interest groups.
Direct lobbying attempts to influence public officials to favor their ideas by having their members speak to legislatures directly in an attempt to get laws passed and candidates elected that support their ideas.
Litigation is when individual members representing their interest groups file lawsuits against an opposing entity. For example, in the case U.S. Forest Services versus Stilo Development Company, the Sierra Club was successful in protecting the Grand Canyon from urban development. The court ruled in favor of the U.S. Forest Services with the influence of the Sierra Club, who testified on the U.S. Forest Service's behalf.
Going public is when interest groups influence the public to agree with their agenda. For example, interest groups may take polls in order to prove that the general public agrees with their ideals.
There are two major interest groups. The first one is the NRA, or the National Rifle Association. The NRA was founded in 1871 and stands for the protection of the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to keep and bear arms. They lobby for and against legislation since 1975. The NRA was initially founded to allow blacks to have guns, protecting their Second Amendment right.
Club is an environmental organization founded on May 28, 1892 in San Francisco. The main purposes are to explore, enjoy, and protect the wild places of the earth, practice and promote Earth's ecosystems and resources, educate and enlist humanity to protect and restore quality of natural and human environments.